The deadline to end a months-long political deadlock in Ireland will come to a head later today. 3 centre-based parties have agreed to form a new government, but they've been unable to reach agreement on policy issues. To move ahead, 2/3 of the smaller Greens must support the accord, a high bar that could scupper the entire process. Well, let's find out more with our correspondent, Shona Murray. Shona, this has been weeks of negotiations. They've had 3 months. Now the caretaker, Taoiseach, is saying it's unlikely, having set a deadline for today, that they're actually going to come to some sort of consensus. So what is it that's causing this extended hold-up?
Yes, I think that's what the electorate is asking as well, seeing as they voted back in February the 8th, which seems like a lifetime ago. Of course, there is a real need for a strong government, given the type of policies that need to be implemented over the next few months. And there are several areas of holding up the process, in particular around the retirement age. 2 parties, the Green and Fianna Fáil, want that kept at 65. They say they promised the electorate this. The others, Fine Gael, say this is unsustainable. We have to increase to 67. There's also huge issues around green policies, because the Green Party wants to be assiduous in implementing the commitments of the Paris Climate Accord. And of course, how do they do that? Well, the Green Party wants to transform how agriculture is done in Ireland. And this is not going down well with rural MPs and the rural electorate, who are already facing huge problems over Brexit, because the UK is its main export market. And there's one other issue which is actually quite unusual. It's around the issue of Palestinian territories. Just before the government was dissolved, a bill was passed through both houses of Parliament, which said that Ireland should no longer import any goods that come from illegal settlement areas in the West Bank. Now, Fine Gael, the governing party at the moment, says that the Attorney General says we can't have that ban because the EU has full competence over trade. The other parties say we have alternative advice, and there really is a consensus in Ireland in general that the Palestinian territories is something that Ireland should always keep on its roadmap of foreign policy, and it's becoming a huge sticky issue for the government. And as you mentioned there, it's well over 100 days since there has been a government in place, and there is hope that something could be complete within the next few weeks. But still, there's no real end to the deadlock in sight.
Not only has the Prime Minister got to handle this sort of political turmoil that they're in, but of course there's the dealing with the pandemic. Now, Leo Varadkar is expected to announce additional easing of those lockdown measures today. You've been in Ireland until quite recently. Just tell us what the sentiment is like. How do the population feel the government's handled the lockdown and the easing of the measures around coronavirus?
I think there's a bit of frustration now that the lockdown is a bit slow to emerge, particularly given that other member states in the EU are definitely on phase 3. Ireland is still only on phase 1, moving into phase 2. But there is a consensus that the government was responsible, and that it was transparent, and that it was in lockstep with international best practice when it came to contact tracing, testing, and all other areas. There were huge shortcomings in the areas of nursing homes, but I think there was a belief that the government did what it could given the circumstances, and trying to learn from the member states like Germany and Italy and others like France. So I think there is a feeling that it did its best, and then I think that's reflected in the polls. The government itself has seen its popularity rise quite considerably. Rosie.
Shona, thank you very much.